Hi, guys. Welcome back to Ungifted. I can't wait to see what happens. I think this book is so funny. I'm really enjoying it. All right, but first, our author questions. Okay, so what is your nickname? One of the reasons I wrote the sixth grade nickname game was that I hardly ever got cool nicknames as a kid. Gordy, Gordo, nothing too creative. But when I was in sixth grade, I was the G Man. I loved it. I've been waiting decades to get another nickname that good. Do you have a nickname? Hmm? Yeah, I had one in school. I can't remember what it was. It was like Ray Stevens because my last name was Stevens when I was a kid. And there was some famous singer named Ray Stevens. I never had a really cool nickname. What did you want to be before you became a writer? When I was 2 years old, I wanted to be a dog when I grew up. I don't actually remember this, but my parents tell me that I used to eat dinner under the table in preparation for this career. Good thing I wound up a writer. I never could have gotten into the union. Dogs. Well, I don't know. There's probably books written by dogs. All right. On to the book. This chapter is called Uncredited, Mr. Osborne, IQ 132. If I didn't know better, I'd swear that Donovan Curtis wasn't gifted at all. I'd bet a month's pay that an eighth grade boy who had been chosen at absolute random and dropped into the top academy for differentiated instruction in the state. But I did know better. Our selection procedure was ironclad. Students had to pass a battery of tests from the State Department of Education, not to mention faculty interviews and even a psychological exam. A mosquito couldn't make it through the screening process. Our last faculty meeting was essentially a seminar on Donovan Curtis. It turned out to be quite a revelation. All his teachers had realized that he was weak in their courses and had assumed that his gifts lay elsewhere. But after comparing notes, it became clear that his gifts lay nowhere. He was mediocre in English, social studies, French, and computer science, and well below average in math and science. I didn't expect him to excel at everything, but Donovan excelled at nothing, which begged the question, what was he doing at the academy? Have you tried getting him involved with the robotics team? Asked our principal, Brian Del Rio. I nodded. He's our designated Googler. Your what? He has no knowledge of programming, engineering, hydraulics, pneumatics, or even basic mechanics, so he surfs the internet looking for pictures to download and paste on Tin Man, like Albert Einstein eating a banana. Brian frowned. What's Tin Man? The robot. It's short for Tin Man Metallica SquarePants. Donovan's idea. You don't think he's putting us on, do you? Suggested Ellie Shapiro, the department head for social studies. Some of these bright kids have a warped sense of humor. I doubt it, I told her. To be honest, the other kids love what he's done with the graphics, and nobody's ever thought of naming the robot before. I admit, I wasn't too crazy about the idea. At first, I only went along with it to empower Donovan, but you know what? I'm glad we did it. It's very cute, Ellie agreed. It's more than cute, I amended. It's humanized our entire program. The difference between dealing with an it and a him is a transformative concept. Maybe that's our answer, Brian mused. Dozens of brilliant kids pass through your class, building machines that win prizes at the highest levels. Yet the simplest things, naming a piece of equipment or decorating it, gets by everybody except Donovan. Maria Bella, oh, it's been a while since I've had to say this name. You know, it's so hard for me to say. Maria Bevilacqua, math, spoke up. Or he does it because he can't do anything else. He doodles through my class. He hasn't taken a single note. I jumped on this. A photographic memory? He's lucky he can remember his own name, she deadpanned. I asked him what school he came from, and you know what he said? I forget. If that's a photographic memory, he left the lens cap on. Perhaps it's kind of a social intelligence, Brian ventured, really reaching. Oh, please, Maria snorted. He may seem like a smooth operator compared to our usual clientele, but there is nothing special about him in that way either. I have to agree, I said wearily. He alienated Abigail on day one, and he causes a lot of friction in the lab. Luttrell feels threatened by him, and JC doesn't know what to make of him. JC doesn't quite know what to make of anyone, Ellie cut in. Chloe comes the closest to understanding him, but they butt heads too, I went on. And as for Noah's so smart that most of us can't even begin to imagine what's going on in his head, Maria put in. I sighed. Maybe. But the reverse is also true. Noah can't understand not understanding. And there's Donovan, who understands nothing. To Noah, he's like some exotic space alien who crash landed in the gifted program. Maybe Noah isn't wrong about that, Maria challenged. Brian's brow furrowed. What are you saying? What if, Maria went on, our much valued, credentialed teacher with triple time credited for real hands on experience? They're kids, Brian. Where are they going to get hands on experience of that? Would we even want them to? We're still working on a few possibilities, he admitted. They could take the course after school or over the summer. Think of the students you're talking about, I pleaded. They take music lessons, learn languages, intern at research labs, work with private tutors. They're scheduled down to the nanosecond. You're going to make them give that all up for sex ed? Human growth and development, he amended. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves. He nodded grimly. We are. Wait a minute. Hang on. We skipped a page. Let's go back. All right. What if, Maria went on, our much vaunted selection system broke down and sent us your average knuckle dragger? Impossible, our principal was adamant. All our kids have strengths and weaknesses. We seem to have a good sense of Donovan's weaknesses. It's a start. Now we have to find his strengths. He wouldn't be here if they didn't exist. As the meeting broke up, he pulled me aside. There's one more thing, he hesitated. You're not going to like it. I sighed. Let me guess. Donovan again? This time it isn't Donovan. As you may know, all students graduating from middle school are required to complete 1/4 of human growth and development. Human growth and development, I echoed. You mean sex education? He made a face. We haven't called it that in decades. But what does that have to do with me? I asked. They teach that in 7th grade, don't they? Usually, the principal took a deep breath. Your kids don't have it. I was horrified. None of them? None of the big names. Euclid, Halloran, Garfinkel, Lee. A few transfers took the equivalent at their old schools. And Donovan's okay. He's got the instruction at Hardcastle. How could we miss that? Brian shrugged unhappily. Robotics has always attracted our best and brightest. Anything new and innovative and exciting is thrown at your group. They're always busy. And the last thing anyone thought they needed was to spend hours drawing diagrams of the human body and watching videos on how babies are made. So what happens now? I asked wearily. I have to drop what I'm doing and spend the rest of the year on sex ed? He shook his head. You need a state certification to teach human growth and development. You're not qualified. So who is? Nobody, Brian told me. Beth Vogel has been coming over from Salem to work with our 7th grade, but she's teaching a full schedule this quarter. The whole district is running on austerity. Staffing is cut to the bone. Believe me, Oz, I've been over this every which way with Dr. Schultz. If there were a way out, we would have found it. The state allows us absolutely zero flexibility. 40 hours under a credentialed teacher with triple time credited for real hands-on experience. They're kids, Brian. Where are they going to get hands-on experience of that? Would we even want them to? We're still working on a few possibilities, he admitted. They could take the course after school or over the summer. Think of the students we're talking about, I pleaded. They take music lessons, learn languages, intern at research labs, work with private tutors. They're scheduled down to the nanosecond. You're going to make them give that all up for sex ed? Human growth and development, he amended. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves. He nodded grimly. We are. I was heartsick. What am I going to tell the kids? Don't tell them anything yet. Not till we've explored every option. Privately, I was hoping that one of my colleagues might bail me out of the mission impossible of Donovan and his hidden talents. Every time another teacher approached me, I expected the eureka moment. I've got it. He's a brilliant... I didn't care what came next. Writer, physicist, harpsichord player, linguist, chess master, infrared astronomer. He has total recall, perfect pitch, a knack for languages, great potential for spelunking, anything. It was a cop-out. The answer wasn't going to drop from the sky and land at my feet. I watched him in my own classroom. Why would he be different anywhere else? Actually, he did less for me than he did for the other teachers, at least in his core subjects. He tried and failed. In robotics, all he did was search the internet for graphics to stick on Tin Man. Seriously, to justify the time he spent on Google Images, we would have needed a robot the size of a 20-story building. A convulsive, high-pitched cackling filled the lab. When I went to investigate, I found Donovan at the keyboard and Noah peering over his shoulder, holding onto it, in fact, hysterical with laughter. Noah never laughed. He had a stratospheric IQ with few common sense skills and zero sense of humor. His thinking was lightning fast and flawlessly accurate, but also 100% literal. I barely recognized him, convulsed with mirth, breathing hard, his face bright pink. What is it? Look, he pointed at the screen, bereft of speech. On the screen, a brief video clip showed a barefoot man walking along the edge of a pool. He stubbed his toe on a rubber dog bone and tumbled, arms flailing, into the water. Noah pounded on the desk, choking. Chloe appeared at my elbow. It's called YouTube, Noah. It's the latest thing, Donovan added. 10 years ago. That's YouTube? Noah was incredulous. I've heard of it, obviously, but I never. Who's the actor? He's brilliant. I really believe that he fell in the pool by accident. I sighed. Of course, a kid like Noah had never explored YouTube before. When he got on a computer, most of us couldn't imagine what he was capable of. What he wasn't capable of were the ordinary things. He's not an actor, I explained patiently. He's a regular person. Anyone can post a home video on YouTube. He was wide-eyed. Anyone? And anyone can watch it, Donovan confirmed. Noah may have started the day a YouTube novice, but by the end of the period, he could have written a doctoral dissertation on it. Such was the power of his intellect. He took Donovan's seat at the computer and disappeared into the site, reappearing only occasionally to explain the math behind his estimate of the total number of videos, over 800 million, or the amount of time it would take to watch them all, more than 600 years. Assuming an average duration of 20 to 25 seconds each, he concluded. I'll be more precise when I've had a few weeks to study it. Way to go, Abigail told Donovan savagely. Noah should be curing diseases and changing the world, not watching some dimwit falling into his pool. Give the guy a break from his brain, Donovan argued. When's the last time anybody saw him so psyched about something? I had to give Donovan that. For all Noah's incredible abilities, the boy would fail out of school if his teachers were to let him. Donovan alone had managed to engage him. Could that be a kind of giftedness in and of itself? Regardless, Donovan had succeeded in running yet another class without yielding the slightest hint as to why he was at the academy. Of all my kids in homeroom, Chloe was the one most taken with Donovan. It was a crush. Not so much on Donovan himself as what he represented. Normal middle school life. She peppered him with questions about parties and school spirit and big games and pep rallies. I wasn't really into that stuff, Donovan told her. He was reluctant to talk about his experiences at Hardcastle Middle. Something must have gone on there that I couldn't quite put my finger on. He seemed anxious to put the past behind him, anxious enough to ignore the obvious signs that he wasn't fitting in here. Had he been bullied? A lot of our students had suffered that at their old schools, but Donovan didn't seem like the type. Chloe would not be put off. Well, there must have been parties, she reasoned. You know, dances, that kind of thing. I think it's a pathetic waste of time, Abigail chimed in. Can you imagine having nothing better to do than bounce around a school gym to bad music under cheap streamers and a cheesy rented disco ball? Don't we all have better things to do? No argument from me, said Donovan. Nothing pleased Abigail less than being agreed with by Donovan. Hey, you guys, do something funny, Noah waved at us from behind a flip video camera. This is for YouTube. The kids ignored him, but I felt it was important to support Noah's new interest. For all his brilliance, Noah spent his life in a kind of cocoon. Pointing a flip cam at people was as close as he got to social interaction. What about Tin Man, I suggested. He looks like a YouTube star to me. Abigail was horrified. That's a terrible idea. We'd be showing the other teams exactly what we're working on for the robotics meet. I chuckled. It's supposed to be a friendly competition, Abigail, not a life and death struggle. Never try to tell Abigail to take it easy. The results of that meet go on your permanent record, she insisted. There could be college admissions on the line, maybe even scholarships. If that's not a life and death struggle, I don't know what is. This could be the year we finally defeat Cold Spring Harbor and win it all. Do you want to risk that? Eventually, we shouted her down. If Cold Spring Harbor found your little clip among 600 years of video on the YouTube, they deserve to beat us again. And anyway, some of the kids were already rolling Tin Man Metallica SquarePants out into the middle of the room. I had to admit, our latest creation was taking shape. No credit to me. Everything had come from the kids. Abigail and Chloe provided the design, and Noah did all the programming. The boy had never watched YouTube, but he could think in a computer code. Kevin was our welding and soldering expert. JC and Luttrell built the body. And there, large as life on Tin Man's chest, was Albert Einstein eating a banana, courtesy of Donovan. There were other graphics too. A cat with a mohawk, the fiery eye of Sauron from Lord of the Rings movies, the flag of Mozambique, and a bumper sticker that read, Office of the New York City Rat Catcher. Noah brandished the flip cam, and Abigail worked the joystick, sending our work in progress on its first trial run. The robot was capable of moving on its own, following a route marked by colored lines on the floor. But the most important rounds of the competition required a human driver. I watched carefully, taking special note of the wheels, which were a new type for us. Last year, Cold Spring Harbor had used Mecanum wheels, which gave them extra maneuverability. But on Tin Man, I couldn't see much difference. Hold it. I got down on all fours and examined the bearings to make sure the mecanums had full range of motion. The problem's not the wheels, put in Donovan. It's the driver. Abigail glared at him. What do you know about robotics? Nothing, he replied honestly. But I can use a joystick. Don't you guys play video games? I'd like to see you do better. And with a casual shrug, he held out his hands for the controller. Eyes shooting sparks, Abigail relinquished it, and Donovan put Tin Man through his paces. I watched in amazement. The robot fairly danced around the room, the lift mechanism moving easily. The mecanums worked like magic, changing direction instantly with a flick of Donovan's wrist. The kids broke into cheers. They mobbed Donovan, begging him to be our operator at the meet, all except Abigail. She stood rooted to the floor, fuming. Got it. Noah lowered the camera and ran for the computer to upload his very first YouTube video. And me? Well, I was thrilled for the team and tantalized at the prospect of finally giving Cold Spring Harbor a run for their money. But I also realized that my chief problem was no closer to a solution. Being good with a joystick because of hundreds of hours of playing video games is not the kind of talent that got a student into the Academy for Academic Distinction. What was Donovan Curtis doing in the Gifted program? All right, the last chapter we're going to read for today is called Unrepaired. Donovan Curtis, IQ 112. The grade glowered off the cover sheet of my social studies paper. D-. Is that graded on a bell curve? I asked Mrs. Shapiro. She was almost sympathetic. No, Donovan, it's just graded. Oh. I wasn't normally grade obsessed, but this really threw me. The thing is, I had no chance with the kind of math and science they taught in this place. If I was going to have any prayer of all of hacking it in the academy, I'd have to rock subjects like English and social studies. That's why I was so shocked about the D-. I'd really worked hard on this paper. Maybe I hadn't aced it by gifted standards, but I figured I'd at least get a B. I would have settled for a C. The teacher sighed. Is there anything you want to tell me? Is something wrong? Something was wrong, all right. When the biggest effort I put into a school project since kindergarten pulled a D-, yes, it was pretty unfair to say that something was wrong. She interpreted my silence as an invitation to probe further. At home, perhaps? Well, it's just that I have ADD. That was pure blind inspiration. Sanderson had ADD, and occasionally he got cut a little extra slack because of it. Mrs. Shapiro's expression softened immediately. Why didn't you say so? I guess I was too distracted by other things. She looked a little suspicious. So I added, I really wanted to make it on my own. ADD doesn't sound very gifted. That's nonsense, she reassured me. You'd be astounded how often giftedness is accompanied by some sort of learning disability. She handed the paper back to me. Why don't you work on this for another week? I didn't like the sound of that. Well, and we'll see what we can do about raising your grade. Maybe there was more to this learning disability racket than met the eye. After all, ADD was just the beginning. With a little bit of effort, I could work up a case of obsessive-compulsive disorder that would knock your socks off. And what about dyslexia? That could be my ticket to ward off any D- that might be coming down the pike in English. I put my all into the social studies paper, and Mrs. Shapiro grudgingly upped it me to a C. I fared no better in English class. Dyslexia or not, C minus was the best I could come up with, and that was a stretch. Have you ever read Beowulf? Even the cliff notes could kill you. I expanded my list of disorders. Restless leg syndrome was a good one. It explained all my fidgeting. And my nonspecific bladder issues allowed me to spend as much time in the bathroom as outside of it. I had this reoccurring nightmare that all my teachers got together and compared notes on my various illnesses, weaknesses, and diseases. At the end of the dream, an ambulance pulls up at the academy to haul me off to intensive care. But when the attendant takes off his surgical mask, it isn't a paramedic, it's Dr. Schultz. Then I'd wake up choking and spitting because Beatrice was sleeping on my face. Yes, the chow chow was still a fact of life. I should say a fact of my life, since she totally loved me. Props to Katie, she tried to help me out. But every time she even got in the same room with her husband's dog, Beatrice growled her off. All the mutt wanted was me. She spent her nights in my bed, her days in my dresser drawer, because my scent was on my sheets and clothing, which meant I spent nights and days scratching at itchy dog hair. There wasn't a part of my body the chow chow hadn't napped on yet. I should open for business as a parking lot. I'd make a fortune in dog biscuits. I would have to put a stop to it, except that I was beginning to think Brad's mother was right. Beatrice really was sick. Her energy level was absolute zero, and she ate nothing at all, which was amazing because her stomach seemed fatter than ever. Nussbaum's pet snake had more get up and go. When the cold-blooded animals are livelier than the warm-blooded ones, you know you've got a problem. Katie was freaking out. If anything happens to Beatrice, Brad's going to drive his M1 halfway around the world and run me over. Not a good idea, I told her. You're a pretty big speed bump. You don't want to owe the Marines a new tank. Poor Katie. Her belly was expanding, her butt was widening, her ankles were thickening, and her varicose veins looked more like a road map every day. She was almost as big a mess as Beatrice, except that Katie hadn't started peeing on the floor. That unpleasant surprise came in the form of a warm puddle on the carpet as I made my way downstairs for breakfast. That mutt has got to go, I howled, hopping on the steps, pulling off my soggy sock. My dad grinned at me from the front hall. Is that how you support our troops, by evicting their pets? I don't want to live in a chow chow's toilet, I complained. He laughed appreciatively. Good thing you went to charm school before you got picked for the academy. Even Dad cut me a little slack these days. No wonder the gifted kids were different. They lived in a bubble. I'm going to pick up a carpet steamer on my way to work this morning. Change your socks. I'll give you a ride. Outside, my eyes were drawn to the new bumper sticker on Dad's car. Proud parent of an honor student at the Academy for Scholastic Distinction. I'm not an honor student, I managed. Understatement of the year. I just go there. He was unperturbed. Everybody's an honor student at that place. It's an honor just to walk in the door. We're all proud of you, Donnie. Your mother and me, Katie. Right, I snorted. She said I'm dumber than her bladder-challenged dog. Dad started the car. She may not say it in so many words, but don't think she isn't feeling it. These are tough times for our family, what with Brad deployed and the baby coming, and now Beatrice, like we don't have enough stress in our lives already. Then you step in and do something for everybody to feel good about. It's like it was sent from heaven. I felt as if I was losing my mind. Hiding out in the gifted program and carrying the emotional well-being of my entire family? No pressure. At the small appliance shop, I hung back while Dad spoke with the salesman. There was a copy of the town paper lying open on the cashier's desk. I nearly threw up my breakfast when I read the banner headline. Repairs in limbo thanks to Statue Gate. Physical education classes at Hardcastle Middle and High Schools are being held outdoors despite the frigid winter temperatures. The glass double doors of the athletic facility are still boarded shut, and 25% of the floor is badly damaged. The school district is ready to roll on the repairs. A contractor has been hired. So what's the holdup? The Parthenon Insurance Group is refusing to pay, arguing that the damage was caused by engineering negligence in the statue of Atlas, a portion of which rolled down the hill and smashed into the building. The offending object, Atlas's globe of the world and heavens, all 400 pounds of it, was affixed by a single bolt, which corroded over the years. This design flaw, Parthenon argues, is the responsibility of the statue's manufacturer. However, Classical Bronze Foundries, Inc. went bankrupt in 1998, leaving the school high and dry. The Hardcastle School District has filed suit against Parthenon, but the case is likely to drag on for years, according to Superintendent Alonzo Schultz. In the meantime, the physical education program is out in the cold. All varsity basketball home games have to be relocated, and even the middle school's annual Valentine's Day dance will take place elsewhere. Dr. Schultz holds out little hope for an early resolution unless he can track down a person of interest in the case. Yikes! If the insurance company stiffed the school district, would this person of interest have to pick up the tab? It wasn't my fault Schultz cheaped out and bought a bum statue from a company that went bankrupt. Classical bronze foundries probably tried to save a few bucks on bolts and had to pay it all back 100 times over in lawsuits. But I'll bet our superintendent was the only genius who put his atlas at the top of a hill overlooking a breakable gym. With a sinking heart, I watched Dad haggling with the salesman, trying to save every penny. We weren't poor, but money was tight, especially with an extra mouth to feed, Katie, and a baby on the way. The one good thing about Beatrice's hunger strike was that we weren't blowing a fortune on dog food. There was no way we could afford to fix a busted gym. It didn't take Noah Euclid or Abigail Lee to do that math. I got to the academy earlier than usual, which gave me some much-needed extra time to work on my science project. Abigail's was entitled The Ambiotic Synthesis of Organic Compounds. Chloe's had something to do with the wave-particle duality of light, whatever that is. Noah's the Euclid constant was this number he developed that supposedly explained the expansion of the universe in the first few seconds following the Big Bang. Mine was called Chow Chows, a special breed. Obviously, it wasn't as impressive as the others, but I was really slaving over it. My plan was this. I was never going to outscience the academy kids, but I could give it the personal touch. Hey, if I was stuck being hospice nurse to a dying dog, at least I should get a project out of it. I had photographs and sound recordings of barking and microscopic slides of fur and drool samples. If I loaded up enough stuff, Mr. Hallman would have to give me a decent grade on sheer volume. And if he turned out to be a dog lover, I'd be golden. I stashed my coat in my locker, which was still basically empty. Lockers are huge at the academy. I'd never seen it, but supposedly one kid kept a full tropical fish tank in his, plugged into the built-in power strip. Unlike Hardcastle Middle with its no phones during school hours rule, the academy encouraged its gifted students to have laptops and smartphones charged up and available at all times. You never know when the research bug might hit, Mr. Osborne was fond of saying. It made me smile that Noah, apex of the IQ pyramid, now used his BlackBerry purely for watching YouTube. The robotics lab was deserted when I got there. "Hey, Tin Man," I said, greeting him in a low voice, bestowing a very gentle high five on one of the lifting forks. Call me crazy, but it sort of pleased me that the robot had a name thanks to me, just like it pleased me that I was now Tin Man's first-string driver for the robotics meet. I know that must seem pretty stupid coming from someone who was in such big trouble in every other phase of his life. Standing there next to Tin Man, I happened to glance over at the teacher's desk. There was an internal memo form on top of the mess. My eyes froze on the subject. Summer school. It had to be about me. Who else in this class of brainiacs could possibly need summer school? In the interest of self-preservation, I had to read it. Oz, as we feared, the district has been unable to find a certified teacher to offer human growth and development to your students who have unfortunately missed it. Summer school appears to be their very only option. The kids affected are Chloe Garfinkel, Abigail Lee, Noah Euclid. That was as far as I got before Mr. Osborne came and caught me snooping. "Donovan, step away from my desk." I was too blown away to worry about whether or not he was mad. "Summer school?" I exclaimed. "For those guys?" "It's none of your business," the teacher interrupted. "It doesn't affect you at all." "But why would the smartest kids in town need summer school?" I persisted, bewildered. "What's human growth and development?" "It's a health course required by the state," he explained wearily. "You took it last year in 7th grade. Light dawned. "And you were so busy teaching them genius stuff that you missed it?" I mulled it over. "That's on you, not them." He looked like I'd slapped him. I know. I would have bet money that I had absolutely nothing in common with my gifted classmates. But here they were just like me, getting jerked around because the school district had messed up. I was on the hook for the damage caused by Schultz's defective statue. They were on the hook for a required course nobody remembered they needed, and the cost was going to be one summer. So teach it to them, I concluded. Those guys, it won't take 10 minutes before they know it better than you. He shook his head gravely. The teacher has to be state certified, or it has to come from hands-on experience. Hands-on experience? I repeated, startled. They want that? Isn't it all about, well, you know. Physiology, he interjected. Adolescence, body changes. The seed of an idea began to germinate in my mind. What else? I prompted. Reproduction? Katie folded her arms atop her big belly. You're out of your mind, she told me. I always knew you were crazy, but this is proof positive. Don't be like that, I wheedled. It won't cost you anything except a few trips to the school. Why should you care? You'll be pregnant anyway. It won't cost me anything, she echoed. How about my privacy, my dignity, my self-respect, my right to bring a baby into this world without turning it into a science fair project? It isn't even for me, I argued. These kids really need your help. They're in a jam. She was adamant. Well, if they're so gifted, let them find a way out of the jam. You have to do this for me, I said stubbornly. No way, Donnie, not in a million years. I'm not crawling into a petri dish for you or anybody. I sighed. Well, okay. I feel sorry for Brad, though. She was wary. What's Brad got to do with it? You know, there he is, so far from home, serving his country. It'll break his heart when he finds out his beloved dog isn't getting the care and attention she deserved. I pointed to Beatrice, who was making another liquid deposit on the rug. She shrieked so loud that it brought Mom running up the stairs. What's wrong? Nothing, Mom, I called, but fire up the carpet steamer, will you? We're going to need it in a few minutes. Katie was beside herself. Just what are you saying? Do I have to spell it out for you? If I don't look after Beatrice, Beatrice doesn't get looked after. And that's my fault, she demanded. She won't let me anywhere near her. I totally sympathize, I assured her. Bad things happen to good people sometimes. Look at the poor academy kids. It isn't their fault they missed this credit, but they're the ones who have to suffer. Just like it isn't your fault your mother-in-law dumped a dying dog on your doorstep. Don't say dying. She's not dying. She can't. Suddenly, Katie clued in. You miserable, blackmailing slime bucket. This is low even for you. I nodded in agreement. Poor Brad. She was bitter. What do you care if a bunch of nerds go to summer school? You already took this course. There's nothing in it for you. She was only half right. There was nothing in it for me. At least, nothing I could explain to Katie. If this worked, if following Katie's pregnancy could count as hands-on experience for human growth and development, that would strengthen my ties to the Academy for Scholastic Distinction. It wouldn't make my grades any better, but it might take people's attention off how ungifted I was. The longer I could stay at the Academy, the longer I could keep myself hidden from Schultz's justice. Selfish? Big time. And something else, too. It was absolutely what James Donovan would have done. Maybe Ancestry.com wasn't such a waste of money after all. The Hardcastle gym may have been my Titanic, but we were survivors, James and me. Aloud, I said, I'm doing it because a nice person helps his friends. She rolled her eyes, but I knew I had her. Oh my goodness, he is super clever, isn't he? That's what I think. Plus, it sounds like he makes class just a little bit more fun. All right, so I will see you on Wednesday at 4 o'clock for more chapters. See you later, guys.